We all know how this starts. It starts with a boy.
Same old story. Boy finds girl, boy loses girl, girl finds boy. Boy forgets girl, boy remembers girl. And girl dies in a tragic blimp accident over the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day.
Well, not quite. It starts with two characters who meet and seem the total opposite. A series of events occur to keep them apart. However, fate can't deny itself any longer, and they live happily ever after. Even way back in 1931, Charlie Chaplin's City Lights shows that after hard work and determination, you can win the girl. However, as time has passed, it's gone from boy meets girl, to boy meets boy, to girl meets girl, to girl meets a large fish, or a girl meets a duck. We're getting ahead of ourselves though. We have to first work out the formula to making a romantic film, and why it works. And this is the ever-changing face of the romantic comedy. From Bringing Up Baby to A Philadelphia Story, from Here to Eternity to An Affair to Remember to Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's clear that the ideal of romantic comedies is that love triumphs all. It's straightforward. It has a beginning and an end. That being said, in 1967, The Graduate came out. It would seem like any other romantic comedy. Dustin Hoffman, a recent college graduate, starts an affair with an older woman, where in time, he falls in love with her daughter. I want to bring attention to the film's final moments. It is an ambiguous and ominous ending. Their happiness and confidence slowly slips away as it soon dawns on them the reality of their situation. The narrative is the same. However, we are treated to something different. This is the first sign that the happy ending may not be a happily ever after. Then, in 1977, a film came along. This film was called Annie Hall. The narrative structure of all these romance films that we have discussed are linear. However, Annie Hall did something different. It asked if you could change the structure of a romance film. Annie Hall was about a breakup. It immediately broke the fourth wall.
Annie and I broke up, and I still can't get my mind around that. You know, I keep sifting the pieces of the relationship through my mind and examining my life and trying to figure out where did the screw up come, you know? And
it wasn't a perfect outlook on love. It was more complex than just a boy meets girl scenario. It is a reality for which the audience is shown that these two characters are not meant to be together. The non-linear structure is to further indulge in the fantasy and reality. Woody Allen was clearly inspired by filmmakers such as Ingrid Bergman and Fellini with their films 8½, and Persona. And then Jules and Jim from the French New Wave, which showed a darker and more fantasy-driven style to creating romantic movies. It's clear to see that the Western culture pushed romance films. However, without films like these, we wouldn't have had our classics. So when it comes to Annie Hall, what is Allen trying to say? Well, it's to make a true statement on human relationships. And that's what it's about. Connection. Human connection. The fantasy we are presented with the narrator is to examine why the relationship did not work. It's not all smooth sailing. Sadly, Diane Keaton's role as Annie Hall, despite being a strong female character, still falls victim to the male gaze. To take a quick pause, I want to discuss non-linear narrative, specifically in the film True Romance. It may be questioned whether this is a romantic film, let alone a romantic comedy. However, the writer Quentin Tarantino discusses his reasoning. Why is a non-linear structure more interesting to an audience?
The biggest difference is, audiences, as long as they're in good hands, they like being curious. They don't like to be told everything, all right? If they think that they're in good hands, if they think the storyteller will eventually take care of them, they can wait if they think, it's not a mistake, if they think it's on purpose.
So within the romantic comedy genre, it had grown stale. Spike Lee's debut feature, She's Got to Have It, featured a non-linear narrative and a film that focused on an African-American experience, which hadn't been seen like this before. It was a rare and unexpected film. So when we take Harry Met Sally, released the same year, Nora Ephron, the writer of this film, manages to break the convention of the mainstream romantic comedy and make something completely fresh. We are presented Harry and Sally. They meet, take a dislike to one another, then never to see each other again. Then 5 years later on a plane, still don't get on. 5 years later, after heavy breakups, they meet again and become friends. There are no big subplots, nothing massive is keeping them apart. Sally, unlike most women in these sort of films, does not need a man to fulfill her. She has a career, and as does Harry. We are just presented two characters, and through the comparison of time, are shown a more mature and interesting story through simply allowing them to spend time apart. The conversation drives the plot. They first raise a topic, second, debate the topic, and in turn reveal more about their characters. We are never shown the full story. As John Truby states, that for an advanced storytelling method, that it goes from dialogue about what the characters are doing to who the characters really are, for which Nora Ephron does. However, if we look at her next movie, Sleepless in Seattle, the opposite occurs. But why is that? Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks are kept apart for the entire movie. They fall into the romantic comedy troupe of forces keeping them apart. We are shown our hero. He has lost his wife, who sets the tone that our hero has to start a journey. His son, out of desperation, seeks help for his father. In a chance of fate, Ryan listens and realises she's never felt love like this. We are sent out on a series of events of nearly crossing paths, to a case of mistaken identity, to eventually meeting on top of the Empire State Building, holding hands and walking off into the distance like her favourite film. The genre conventions that have been undone in When Harry Met Sally are not present in this. If we fast forward in time in the romance genre, not much has changed dramatically. There was a progression on the small scale of sexuality within romantic comedies. With Ang Lee's Wedding Banquet, we were treated to a romantic comedy with a same-sex couple. It changed the audience perspective. However, if we compare it to Four Weddings and a Funeral, with the couple portrayed by John Hannah and Simon Callow, they were used as a dramatic plot device rather than a comedic one. Later on, an emerging filmmaker called Kevin Smith released a film called
Chase and Amy.
Simple Story. Boy meets girl, boy likes girl. Girl is not interested in him. He pursues her to find out she really isn't interested in him at all. In the years to come, we were presented a series of romance films which would struggle to break the mould. From Jerry Maguire to Notting Hill to 10 Things I Hate About You. They were safe bets. We even went back to the start with Shakespeare, the very famous romantic comedy, the greatest love story ever told. There was an exception to this, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This is a non-linear narrative approach about love and loss. This was not like before. It did something bold. It created a subgenre, the element of science fiction used to elevate the world of fantasy and reality. Eternal Sunshine, unlike many of the films that have come before it, has a more optimistic view on love. It's a world in which we are shown the breakdown of a relationship. The non-linear approach can be used to show the structure that the relationship is worth the heartache, or used as a personal learning curve. A new narrative opens up for which these characters desire a second slate to start again. The film challenges conventions. Specifically, it is challenging genre conventions of the female character. The character of Kate Winslet is the first true character that stands on her own 2 feet. She is not perfect. She has flaws. This idea is called the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Natalie Portman in Garden State is a prime example of this character. She plays this idea to Zach Braff's Andrew Largeman. Greta Gerwig and Frances Ha plays on this idea, breaking down the wall of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. This idea comes from the very start, with Katharine Hepburn to Diane Keaton, which we discussed earlier. However, Kate Winslet breaks this illusion.
You guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm gonna make them alive. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours.
I remember that speech really well.
Then, in 2009, 500 Days of Summer came out. It was presented in a non-linear structure with the idea of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. However, this time, it broke both conventions. It had a postmodern statement that this isn't a love story. The narrator is not the lead character. It is an outside look at the breakdown of their relationship. If we are to break it down, the lead character is not the hero. Tom Hansen idolises this girl. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl is deconstructed over the course of the film. Tom's idea of love comes from a misreading of The Graduate. The non-linear structure allows for the reality and fantasy to clash, shown specifically through scenes repeated in the same way Harry Met Sally did it. The dance sequence, to his spark comparison to what he loves and hates, then to the opening and closing scene. Two different interpretations of the exact same scene, with a different outlook through the simple use of non-linear narrative. Juxtaposition between moments show that Summer is a person, not an ideal. Then in years to come, the progression of the romance genre has taken many forms. Most recently, the mumblecore genre. Richard Linklater was an early example of this with Slacker. He would later go on to create a trilogy of films entitled Before Sunrise, which chronicles a dreamlike romance after two people meet on a train after watching a couple argue. Before Sunset, which revolves around the longing for that night and the responsibility of their lives. And then Before Midnight, which showed the full circle of the previous two, with the reality of relationships, becoming the couple arguing on the train. These films place years after one another, centered around a couple, allowing the film's free-flowing conversation to emulate When Harry Met Sally. Films such as Puffy Chair, Drinking Buddies, Blue Jay, and Safety Not Guaranteed are just few examples of mumblecore movies that were spawned and have utilised romance films of the past with a low budget by putting emphasis on dialogue over plot while dissecting personal relationships. However, narratively speaking, the romance genre still has a fundamental structure. It can and has been broken. It has progressed from where it first began, with its subject matter. However, the truth is, the romance genre is ever changing on the surface, but beneath, it's still the same. As Robert McKee states, that within the genre conventions that the writer must not only fulfill audience anticipation, but must lead their expectations to fresh, unexpected moments. So what does that mean? It could mean for someone to hold a boombox outside your window with a killer Peter Gabriel song, to share a kiss in the rain. No, not that one. To love someone more than you love yourself. To share a connection with someone you can't have with anyone else. It's about human connection in its simplest forms. Doesn't everyone want to connect with someone? I know I do.
What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Barry.
I'll take it. Then what?